What I liked in this episode is, you got a nice kind of reintroduction to the characters and everything, and one of those dynamics includes Tommy and Diamond and how they work together and bounce off of each other, kind of thing. Like, because with Tommy, I feel like he is better when he is in a duo, like when he has somebody else, a partner that he kind of bounces off of, because we know Tommy is a hothead. He'll be the guy that will get angry and just want to go kill someone, as we saw at the end of this episode. So I feel like he needs someone to balance that out, and Ghost was the perfect person to do it. And it was very entertaining to watch with Ghost, because sometimes Ghost would actually take advantage of Tommy's red hot blood, basically, like, and kind of use that to his advantage. But this time around, I don't think Diamond is, he's not a strategist like Ghost was. He's very much a more, chill, more kind of relaxed kind of guy, and he's got his own problems going on with the new parole officer and everything. So I feel like it's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch, because Tommy, he's already said he wants the map. We know that he's very violent and he's ready to, shoot up the spot at any moment. So I think seeing the dynamic between Tommy and Diamond is going to be very entertaining this time around, just because of the circumstances that they're in, with the CBI, and then you have the whole Jannard separation as well. So yeah, I can't wait to see that. And I think that, because Diamond has this parole officer and this PO is going to be like very strict, I think there's going to be some interesting or entertaining moments where we see Tommy kind of getting in the way of that. Like, he might jeopardize Diamond's standing with the parole officer, and he could even be at risk of getting locked up again. So I think having that responsibility is a good thing to watch play out between these two. So yeah, that's one thing I really liked, because I'm kind of looking at this as a reboot as well, in a way, because to me it felt like they really wanted to kind of reintroduce everything to us and say, yeah, these are the same characters that you already know, but now they have this and this going on. So I'm all the way invested in seeing how their partnership is going to play out in this, and of course we know Tommy is, he's stuck on revenge because he wants to avenge Liliana too. So that could very much cause some problems, especially with the Flynn family. And we already kind of saw that starting to happen a little bit. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. And then, secondly, we see that Tommy, he's already picked up a love interest now, in Maria, and that is a very dangerous situation to explore, because she happens to be the sister of the new plug character, Miguel. So that dynamic is very interesting to watch. And so there's 2 points here. Firstly, I want to say that the Miguel character, I feel like he's a very interesting addition. Number one, just because it adds like a new kind of, we get to see, the Hispanic side of Chicago and stuff. So I like that whole dynamic. And, he also seems very, what's the word? Like, he's not a very trusting person, I guess, and he's already suspicious of Tommy. So, and then, also he has like what I liked is that they showed his power in the fact that, you know, he has this presence and he has all these people around him who follow his lead. So he's a very dangerous guy because he has that loyalty, right? So they showed his power, but they also showed his weakness and the fact that he has diabetes. So I like that addition because, you know, sometimes we like as a sick person myself, we don't always like see that representation of people who have these problems, you know. So I like that they kind of had that addition, and you know, it's such a strong character, but he has this weakness that he lives with, and his sister actually helps him with that. So that was a cool dynamic to see. But then you've also got the fact that Tommy is now, you know, interested in his sister. So, and we see he was kind of pursuing her a lot in this episode. So that's no doubt going to cause some issues and some conflicts. And yeah, so I want to see how all of that plays out. And there's also the fact that both Jannard and CBI are kind of, you know, associated with Miguel. So there could be some issues there too, some conflicts of interest. So yeah, interesting setup there, I think. And what else did I want to say? So the Flynn family. Now, I was always a bit weary of them as characters, you know, in the first season. Like I think the most interesting one is Claudia by far, right? And this like her Vic, I just don't see his potential as a character. Like I don't know where they're gonna take his character this season because he's always like nothing's changed about him. He's just this passive guy who's brooding over the death of his girlfriend who wasn't even loyal to him anyway, you know. So I don't know, like where are they gonna take him? Are they gonna give him like a kind of arc, like a story arc where he kind of rises above it and he becomes this like mean guy who, you know, kind of takes over and everything, and maybe even, you know, kills his father or opposes his father, or, you know, leaves the family and goes out on his own. Like, I just want to know where they're going to take his character because it is getting a bit boring to see the same routine from him. You know, first he agrees to, you know, deal with his sister and everything, go 50-50. And then by the end of the episode, he's upset and wanting to leave. It's like, it's the same routine over and over with him. So that could get very tiring, I feel like. Walt is a very unhinged and unpredictable character. So I think he does offer some entertainment, you know, just seeing him self-destruct on screen, basically, because he makes like some really poor decisions and he's also a hothead. Claudia is definitely by far the most interesting of the family, and I think that she has a thirst for power, and it's going to be interesting seeing that because I think what's in her future is taking over the family. I feel like she's going to be the one to really persist until she is at the head of the household. And whether that involves her father dying or not will be the interesting part. So, yeah, the Flynn family, overall, I would say they need to do something like very big with them this season for them to feel like a needed part of the show, because right now, like I could have the show without them. Like everything with Tommy and CBI and JP and D-Mac and Kate, like all of that stuff is interesting enough without the Flynn family. So it's like, why are they here? You know, it's like, do something meaningful with them. Like that's my stance, because right now it just seems like, you know, Claudia's the only strong one. Like that's got a good connection to the story, because we know Tommy, he wants to avenge Liliana, and we know Claudia is the one that took her out. So I think that is interesting, you know. But besides that, it's like, okay, show us why we should care more about them, because they do take up a lot screen time. So I hope they take that story somewhere. There is a theory that could be interesting with the Flynn family, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, those are my takeaways. Just to end it off, I'll say that this episode was a big step up from what we had last season. So I am excited to see more. I am excited to see where they take it. It seems much better structured now. Like there's actually a structure. It feels like they have a plan for the characters. And it seems like they're planting a lot of seeds and, plot points for the future. So it is much better already. So yeah, I mean, is it as good as Ghost so far? No, it's not. Like season 3 Ghost, it wasn't the best season of Ghost, but it was entertaining from the first episode. This one was cool, but it's not there yet. We need to see a lot more, I think, to really say, yeah, this is much better. This is it right here. So that's my takeaways for episode 1. Hopefully I didn't run too long there, but I'm going to go to Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. next and get his takeaways. So can't wait to hear what you've got to say, Rich. Hit us with it when you're ready.
First and foremost, excellent takeaways as always, Gary. I have to agree that I definitely enjoyed this start to the season. So I want to give a shout out to Gary Lennon because not only is he the showrunner, but he also wrote this episode. So yeah, like you said, it does feel like it's a reboot. So I am intrigued, but of course, let's see where things go from here. So I have 3 quick takeaways I'm going to get into. The first one I'm going to touch upon is the Flynn's. Pretty much, I'm glad that they emphasize that there are consequences for all the things that Walter did last season. The fact that he got Dublin involved in all this business with Tommy Egan, and the fact that now he has a price to pay. Now, we did see that in this episode, he had a conversation and they gave him a price for his freedom. And obviously, Walter doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the funds to cover this cost, but he still believes that he is able to do this because, as you said, Gary, he is very reckless and unpredictable. So I'm very curious to see how he is going to handle this situation. He does have a deadline where he has to pay them by the end of the month. So there's a lot that can happen in Power because we already know a lot of stuff happens fast in Power anyway. So I look forward to seeing what happens with that. He does finally catch up with Claudia and Vic, and he does tell her that he wants to make sure that they kill Tommy because Tommy, for some reason, Tommy still doesn't know who killed Luciana. All right. So they basically he does tell Claudia, well, we need to kill him before he finds out. So the one thing that I will say is that, again, Claudia is just as unpredictable and dangerous as her father because she decides to kill the chemist in this episode because our very good friend, Miss Dana Abercrombie, she is the one that leaked the Dahlia formula online. Now, that's a very interesting storyline because I have some theories about who I think on the show actually did that, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But I'm very curious to find out who started this because clearly we know that Jannard did approach Claudia in this episode with a business proposition. She turned him down. I just want to see what happens with that. But I will say, and as you said, Gary, with all the stuff with Vic, the character was very weak last season. Obviously, he lost the love of his life, but it feels like he needs to rebound somehow this season. So I want to see where his storyline goes. He knows that both his sister and his father can't be trusted because you saw that him and Claudia had a conversation in this episode that they were going to work together, and then she decides to kill the chemist. And she's acting on her own impulse. So I want to see where they're going with all of this. I don't particularly care about the Vic character, but I believe that he's still around because they want to try to give him some redemption arc. So we need to see where that's going. So stay tuned for that. The second takeaway is about Gary's favorite character so far this season, Jannard. Okay. This episode, Jannard looked very desperate because apparently he's low on product and he owes Miguel some money for the re-up. So obviously the one thing that he did do is he did convince Chewie to join him after Chewie already emphasized that he agreed to work with Tommy and Diamond, but then he approached Chewie and gave him a better offer. So he did succeed in getting Chewie over to his side temporarily because, as you said, Tommy took care of him at the end of this episode. But Jannard is in a situation where he does owe Miguel. So he now at the end of this episode, towards the end of this episode, we're introduced to a new character called Shanti. This is, I guess, Jannard's love interest for this season. She is a boxer. I'm very curious to see where they're going with that storyline. She does try to give him money at the end of the episode, and he says, no, I'm good. I'm all set. I just want you. The little corny lines that you're going to tell somebody that you, I guess you have a really strong passion for. So, yes, he has a love interest now with this character. I want to see where that's going because obviously this is somebody he cares about. He doesn't want her getting involved too deep into this stuff. But she also was selling product, too, and gave him money. So she is already involved. But we know because of how dangerous things are with Jannard, people are going to definitely get hurt. And I want to see where that goes. I also want to see if we're going to see the return of Cousin Buddy, because he was not in the finale. And obviously, he also had a conversation with Jannard last season where they were going to work together. So I want to see where they're going with that. And also, Merkovich is going to be an issue now because Jannard promised territory to him that now Tommy and Diamond have. And of course, they're going after Jannard hard, saying, yes, you're going to give us what I asked for, or there's going to be a lot more trouble. So I want to see where they're going with that. I personally thought that Merkovich should have got killed last season, but for some reason they decided this character must survive going into season 2. So let's see what happens. And finally, the final takeaway of this episode, it goes back to a conversation we had right before we started recording. Talking about Tommy. This is the Tommy Egan I want to see on this show. The one he doesn't care. He takes charge and does whatever he wants to do. And the fact that they're connecting this storyline with Diamond, because Diamond is a character that obviously right now this season, two things I want to say real quick about Diamond. I'm very glad they got rid of that boring storyline with Adrienne. I believe her name was Adrienne. That was the reporter he was in a relationship with last season. And you see she sends him a breakup text in this episode. I was glad to see that because I felt like that's the storyline that they added. They added a lot of additional storylines they didn't need for last season. So glad that character is gone. Nowhere to be worried about, at least hopefully not for now. And of course, Seamus, which is the other parole officer that he bribed and was on the payroll. So I'm glad that both of those are out. But this new parole officer, this is a very interesting dynamic here because this guy is going to do, the random drug tests, the screenings. He's going to make sure that Diamond is there. And he does tell Diamond in this episode, you are not to communicate with any fugitives. Diamond is working with Tommy, all right? Tommy does what he wants to do. He killed Chewie in this episode. He's talking to Maria, I believe that's Miguel's sister's name. He's talking to her, even though he was warned not to do that. So this is why I want to say, I want to see where all this is going, because clearly Tommy is going to create problems for everybody. At the same time, you have the DEA task force, which we were introduced to last season. They finally know who Tommy is. They identified this is Tommy Egan, and they are going to send a task force after this guy. So there's a lot of pressure on Tommy. He doesn't see it coming yet. And of course, he still has the sole intention and purpose of he wants to get all of Chicago. So, like I said, I think it's a good start to the season so far. Two last things I will mention that we want to be mindful of and watch. There was a scene in this episode where Tommy is having a conversation with Kate. He tries to give Kate some drugs and she denies it and says, no, I'm good. I'm off that. I'm trying to stay clean. Obviously, Kate is trying to build a relationship with D-Mac, as well as JP. So I understand why she doesn't want to show them that side of her. But I want to see if she spirals in this season, if something happens with her in regards to that. So watch out for that. And the other thing I will mention is we do know that when Miguel talks, he has his conversation with Diamond. He does tell Diamond that obviously he has some beef with the Serbs. The Serbs and Miguel, those are the two power players right now. And when you saw that Tommy, when he had a conversation with Diamond, and Tommy says, no, why are we working with middlemen? We should be the distributor. But that would mean killing Miguel as well as the Serbs. So this is why I say Tommy is going to bump heads with Diamond a lot this season. And I can't wait to see what happens as a result of that. But yes, so far, I think it was a very good start to the season. I have faith that Gary Linden is going to do a good job. But let's see what happens in the next episodes from here on out.
Oh yeah, excellent observations there as always from Mr. Richard Bailey Jr. And yeah, I agree. It's good that they've done away with some of those like useless plot points from last season and kind of kept it moving. So yeah, that's a good choice. So we'll speak on some more of what you said in a little bit because I do have some other stuff to say on that. But let's go to Dana first. So Dana, hit us with your takeaways.
Y'all done stole all my takeaways. Every single one of y'all. I have nothing to say. I will start off with saying this, that we do know that we do know the showrunner was replaced for season 2. The other one was delivered. He was given his future endeavors. With Shuelamo's future endeavors, you see a massive difference right away with this season compared to the last season. With that being this is a lot more open. You get to see actual locations. We're traveling. We're on the street. Everything used to be very closed in the previous season in terms of, in buildings, inside of things. Now we get to explore more of the Chicago. We're on the streets with them. We're seeing the basketball. We're seeing the trains roll by. We're seeing, people on the street. And I really like that approach. I feel like, Chicago is a city that deserves to be explored just as much as they explored Chicago. Just as much as we're seeing with Queens when it comes to Raising Canaan and parts of Manhattan and, the financial district when it came to Gulf. So with this one, I'm not aware of the layout of Chicago, but just in general, it's nice to see some streets and it's nice to see some people, that we're traveling to them. Remember before in the previous season, we were showing like, these are the Jamaicans, and this is this spot, and these are these groups over here. Now there's a face to a map. And I really appreciate that because you can't say I'm going to take over all of Chicago. I'm going to be king of Chicago without seeing who it is that you're taking over, without going to their territory. And it's not just, a warehouse. Kind of makes you think of all warehouses in Chicago, just some kind of drug den. It's not. They're everywhere in terms of like just people and places and diversity, and I love it. So that was one of the things that really stuck out to me right away. I do have a counterpoint. Sorry, I didn't drop my notes I'm a mess today. Sorry, I have a counterpoint when it comes to, I'm a mess, honey. When it comes to what Gary said previously in terms of the parole officer part, I think that, and this is to go back to the term of Tommy, this is the Tommy show, as we like to always call it and what it's referred to. To give it a name, but it's called the Tommy show. We didn't get much of a Tommy show in the previous season. And so with this, we're getting the Tommy show. And I think one of the ways to do that is to make this more Tommy focused. And in order to do that, I think some of the characters don't necessarily have to disappear, but they have to have other tasks that they're doing. And so by introducing this new parole officer, who is very strict, we see that Diamond is not able to always be with Tommy. And therefore, Tommy has to start doing things. Hence, it's going to be the Tommy show. So you see how that works? It's given, it's like, oh, it's convenient, but this is convenience with a purpose. Something that I think was missing a lot of the times when just in general writing and TV shows. We're not given purpose behind our convenience. And we have this parole officer who is gonna be like a really hard person who's showing up, in your house. He said, I'm gonna show up at your job. You gotta pee every 10 seconds. And I think he's gonna be a real threat to him. And also it causes Diamond to really think, do I really want to partake in this? Certain task at hand may be too dangerous for him to do. And therefore, we have the introduction of other characters that we can bring in, not necessarily to replace him, but, that could just, we're seeing more of Chicago, more involvement with Chicago. So I really think that this is one of the big things in order to get Tommy back into the main focus is to have other people do what they have to do. Another thing that I really love is the filming of this episode. We have the two brothers at war. Right away with their introduction, what I kind of love, I know it can be like a trope sometimes, but it's like they're feuding with each other and they both have these speeches, and it's overlaid with the like, we don't trust that brother no more, and I don't trust my brother no more. See, I like how they did that, and it's a way of establishing that, there's an issue between the two, but we're still kind of thinking alike. And you have to understand, they're brothers. There's going to be overlapping, because not to say everything is going to be thought of the same, but you kind of know each other's movements and patterns because you've lived with them for however long, since you're in the womb. Well, not in the womb. Sorry, that would be twins. But you get the point what I'm saying. You live with that person, you're going to start to notice their patterns and their thought process. So it's really interesting to see them separate for this season. We don't know if they'll have to come back. I hope this does not become super friends again. But for this moment, to see how one can outthink the other one, and without that support there, we saw that kind of towards the end of the first season, but to really lay it on in this one will be really interesting to see. Another thing that I wanted to say was you kind of touched already with Grandma, but I like seeing a different side of Grandma, and everybody who knows, mothers tend to be really sucky towards their children, but great with their grandkids. So it's interesting to see a different side of her this time, and the fact that she does want to be clean. Hopefully it's for her family. She's doing this for herself as well. It's really interesting, the dynamic with Tommy was like, here, take the drugs. And she's like, no. And I'm like, you're pressuring your mom to be a drug addict again. So that's a really interesting thing. And it'll really be interesting if it happens, if it stays, for a while, of seeing her sober and how she responds to things now that she would be completely sober. So I like this. One of the things also with this is it's only been 2 days since Liliana's death. So I am the first one who is boo Victor. I don't like Victor, but I'm going to give him grace this episode because it's only been 2 days. So you can wallow, you cannot wash, you can be depressed, you can, hang out in bars and be disgusting and miserable. But I'm going to need you to find out your purpose later on, because I don't want this to be a whole season of moping, even though I do understand grief is differently. But in terms of, I want my actions, because you're not going to really serve a purpose. Unless that is his purpose for this season, is to not have a purpose, and therefore we're going to have to see the sister take control of everything, which she already done did with the Koalition of the chemist, who, I thought was terrible, but at the same time was a long time coming. I think we were both, all three of us, kind of in shock that she survived the first season. It was like, yay, a Black person made it. But really, why is she still making it at the same time? I'm confused. So they got rid of that. And with the new leakage that is coming out, it would be really interesting because it adds another mystery. I don't think we had that mystery element towards the previous or even the other Power universes as well. I don't recall there being like a mystery of who did something, or if they did, I just feel like this could be the driving theme for this show, this season right now, is who won Leak Dahlia, because there's so many enemies that we have, but maybe it could be someone who worked with either the chemist, she texts someone, I don't know, I'm just making guesses out of my mouth, but it could be the chemist. It could be the chemist person who she texts. It could be anyone. I don't know, but that's kind of the beauty of not knowing who did it. Unlike the whole Liliana situation, we all know, and we're just waiting for Tommy to catch up. I like the fact that we don't know things with this. So that is really interesting. And then also on top of that, JP having his bar back, that's a very nice thing. I would see, and it also gives him something to do. So therefore, he can remain on the sidelines and we can continue to focus on the Tommy show. So that, and also Miguel, he seems to be amazing and crazy, and I like him. The fact that he was torturing the guy, kind of shows without telling. See, I like when we show things instead of telling, something that we've kind of missed during the previous seasons, even though we have a lot of telling when it comes to this. So we're showing how aggressive the brother is. We're showing how protective he can be of his sister. Also with the new cops, the DEA, we're taking fingerprints and it might be illegal. We don't know the tactics of what you're doing. It's sneaky, but like it's good sneaky because you're showing us, as opposed to saying, we're going to go and steal his fingerprints and then we're going to go and follow him in the car. We're showing us things. So overall, I like what we have. And I think I talked too much.